everybody. Welcome to yet another edition of the Middle Georgia Spotlight. I'm your host, Jack Ellis. Thank you so much for joining us this week. In the Spotlight this week, he's been here before, but now he's here in a different capacity. He's now the leader, the minority leader, the Democratic leader, I should say, of the House of Representatives, none other than our own Representative James Beverly from Middle Georgia. What's the district again?
Yeah, 143.
District 143. Well, you must bigger than that now.
Yeah.
But I know all politics is local, so you're right here on the ground doing things. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I know you had to make a special effort to get here, and I appreciate that, because your job taking you all more places than before. So tell us about, first of all, congratulations on the elevation, the appointment, I guess election. I don't know how you go about becoming the minority leader, but it says that someone thinks a lot about your leadership. So how did that come about, and when did it come about?
Well, last year in November, the former leader, as most people know, was Stacey Abrams. So she was a leader, and then for a couple years it was a guy, Bob Trammell. He lost his election. So Republicans ran somebody against him, he got beat, and the seat was open. And so to become the leader, that means that people have observed you. I've been there for 10 years and said...
10 years already?
10 years, this year is 10 years. And many of my colleagues were like, look, it's time. We want you to create the vision, the direction, where we're gonna go, how we're gonna raise money, how do we move the state forward. It's your turn. And I had an election against this guy, William Bodie, who's a dear friend of mine. He's running for the Department of Labor. And I won, I prevailed. But it was the majority, plurality of my colleagues up there who observed me for a decade and said, now's the time, we want you to tell us where we're going. It was fascinating.
Well, congratulations. Yeah. That means that they saw things that we see here in Macon. Those of us who elected you way back when, we saw the potential of your leadership ability, and obviously it's proven true for us that we've been proven right, if you will.
Amen.
And I remember when you were running, you said you wouldn't let us down.
That's
I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
I would work hard for you every day, so obviously you've kept true to that word. But you came into leadership now at the most difficult time, in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of an election that's being contested, even though we know it was a fair and square, with racial unrest, with all type of things going on. So how do you set priorities, the Democrat, because you got the Republicans in charge, so what's your priority? When I say your, as a leader of the Democrats in the House, what's your priority, and how do they line up with what's going on the other side?
Yeah, that's a great question. The first thing I focused on is what is the work? What is the work right now in this moment? It's not what was yesterday, it's not what's tomorrow. It's in this moment, what is the work? And how do you get people to focus on the work? And the work was the pandemic, right? I still wear this mask. I'm vaccinated, I've been vaccinated for a couple months, the second shot, you have too. But the work is, in that moment was, how do you, when you have no answer, how do you keep people focused on what the true work is? And the true work is health. How do we stay healthy in the midst of whatever's going on? Because if you lose your health, it's over, right? And so I contemplated that maybe, 15 months ago as the pandemic started to come to America and we shut down everything. And I said, okay, if I'm gonna concentrate on health, what does that acronym actually mean? HEAL, how do I heal? How do we heal people? As a doctor, how do I heal people? So the H is obviously healthcare, E is education, A is appropriation, how do we put money in the right places? And then L will be liability, like civil liberties, all the stuff that's going on with the police. And I just said, okay, who in my caucus can deal with H, health care? Who can deal with education? Who can deal with the budget? Who can deal with civil liberties? And started convening people around healing our country, starting with Georgia. And people bought in. As a matter of fact, people not just bought in, it's the first time, Calvin Smiley, Calvin's been there for, 100 years if he's listening, maybe 500 years. But anyway, Calvin's a dear friend of mine. And I said, this is the first time in a generation that everybody in my caucus has paid their dues. Every single person has bought into this idea of healing our state. And that's significant. Because where your money is, really, is where your desires are. And so we have 100% dues. The Democratic caucus in across DLCC, Democratic Legislative Caucus, has now said Georgia's a battleground state. We appreciate what you're doing. We're now going to invest in this state for the next 10 years to make sure that the state of Georgia really is truly blue. And so that's how I set priorities, man. It's just the moment happened,
Yep.
it seemed right. Let's lean into it and not be afraid of it, and let's do the work.
Well, one would say if you look back, I haven't looked at all the bills that were passed, but the ones that high-profile ones, you would say that some of them were nonpartisan issues, some of them were Democratic issues, been out there a long time. The hate crime bill you got done, this citizens arrest.
Yep.
You got done. Of course, there were some that you were diametrically opposed to,
Absolutely.
the voting and all that. So how did you try and work to reach out with the Republicans to find some common ground, if you will, on some of these issues?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know me. I mean, you and I are personal friends. There's no, in politics, what I've learned, there's no sort of permanency. There's no, I'm gonna draw a line in the sand, and that's it. You can do that today, but it doesn't last because people change. Politicians come and go. And so they have different ideas. And so I know that walking into a conversation that this is not the end of the conversation. You may get me today, that's fine. But give it some time, then we will prevail. So you take incremental steps toward what you believe is the best trajectory for the state, and that's what I did. So for instance, with the citizens arrest repeal, I could have been the first sign on that bill. I said, nope, I don't want to do that because it's not about James Beverly. It's about what does it look like for the people in South Georgia? What does it look like in North Georgia? What does it look like in Atlanta? We're going to figure our stuff out too. But for me, being a leader means how do you get people incentivized to be a part of something bigger than themselves? And if I take all of the glory, then I take it away from different parts of the state who need to have representation in a very real way. And so the signers on that bill are people from different parts of the state where actual problems happen. And you push them forward and let them go. And then I talk to the governor, obviously, from time to time. And we just sorted it out. Now, and that's just how you do it, right? You know that.
But without compromising principles.
Without compromising principles, without a doubt. So if it's a non-starter, it's a non-starter, right? So sports gaming, for example. Sports betting came up this year, and everybody's pushing it. Governor's pushing it, speaker's pushing it, Senate. But I'm like, y'all need my members to vote for this. And some of my members are like, we got to do this, we got to do this. I said, no. We're not doing that. Not now. Because there's nothing in it for us. Right? There's no money that's going to be appropriated to communities who are on the margins. For real. Yeah, you can give it to Hope, but we got to give people in Bibb County who are in these schools an opportunity to even think about Hope. You're not going to get the Hope Scholarship unless you have a 3.7. Why would I do that? So let's change the rules of the bill. And man, I caught a lot of heat for that. So that's stuff behind the scenes, but I was like, no, I'm not doing that. Why would I do that?
So did it pass?
It did not. I killed it.
Okay, so the gambling is off the table.
It's off the table.
What about casino?
Off the table, all of it.
So it's not even going to a referendum. That's not even
Done.
But what did pass was this draconian voting bill.
Yes.
And what was in that bill that you could support that you say, okay, this is okay, but then there are things that you say, we just got to get rid of this and we'll fight until we get rid of it.
Okay, so I'm gonna flip it a little bit because I don't want to lead with what's good. I want to lead with what's bad. And I'll tell you a couple things that were okay. What's bad is that you go from, in order to get a ballot, it was 180 days. You had 6 months to figure it out whether you want to do absentee or not. And that's a good thing because people get busy doing stuff and oh man, I got to vote, maybe I'll do absentee. And so 6 months is a good time. They shrunk that to 49 days, so they basically cut it in half. They said to all of the counties in the state that you have optional Saturday and Sunday voting, right? Which is interesting. Like, okay, sounds good on paper, but the reality is that if you fulfill one weekend, and let's say you got a county where, okay, one weekend you fulfilled that obligation, but the next 2 weekends coming, you can say, we already did that, we're not going to let anybody else vote. You could stop that. The real takeover was the House Republicans now control the Secretary of State and validating the elections, appointing election boards. So they said, the Secretary of State, you no longer have that power over elections. We now have the power. The House has the power to appropriate money to certify elections, to do this, and we're going to use your money to do it. That was in that bill. And that's horrible. People who stand in line for hours, you cannot give somebody food or water within 150 feet of the door. Well, if I've been standing in line for 3 hours, I get 15 feet from the door, you give me some water, you go to jail. That's a problem. And so those kind of things, there was a lot of all this voting happening. There was private money that were put into different districts because you don't have enough money by your tax base to actually pay for things that people need. They said you can't do that anymore. You can't take private money to help people to get to the polls. That's in that bill. And that's horrible. And so, yeah, I'm diametrically opposed to many of those things plus more. One thing that they did in the bill that I thought was decent is that if you change a polling location, they have to put now these big signs. There'll be 4x4 signs up. You got to advance stuff. So let's say you're closing a precinct. You got to give people advance notice. You got to put stuff up. You got to tell them where you got to go. That's the law now. Before it was just optional. Now you have to do it. And that's one of the things. I'm like, okay, that's okay, right? Things they could have done. They could say, okay, anywhere in the county you want to vote, any day you want to vote, vote. Because we had the technology to say, okay, James Beverly lives right around the corner. He's in this precinct. He's this. Okay, that's where his vote goes, right? So that if you're at work, you got to go across the street to vote. Cool. A lot of people can't get to the polls because I'm at work from 9 to 5 and 9 to 6. I got 1 hour to get there. I forget. But imagine if you were in a county where you could vote anywhere in the county. And we pushed that. And they're like, no, we're not doing that.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Makes so much
Right.
sense. Now, but one thing that did go down that I think is, and you made mention to it, this is local control that I just dislike, and that is having them have the ability to come in and take over local elections,
Right.
if they don't like
the result.
for any reason.
Right.
Now, is that being challenged in the court?
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
being
yeah.
challenged.
Yeah, we're going to. Everything is already filed. We're in court for this now, so that's a fact. The reality is that by the time this stuff plays out, right, is that we'll probably go through one election cycle dealing with this draconian foolishness, Jim Crow 2.0. We're going to have to deal with that. So we got to let people know. So being on your show is important to let people know. Listen, you got to, for 50 days to early vote. We got to set the stage for people over the next 15 months to say, here's when you vote, do it early, make sure your vote's counted, right, and make sure your friends are voting. We have to do that. And so my job would be to go around the state, which I will do, and just tell people, here's what's going on with this law, get ready for it.
Now, one other thing, what came out of the law, which I think was a bad mantra when people said defund the police, I kind of understood what they were saying. They should have said redirect rather than refund, defund, because no one wants to defund the police. But what that led to some legislation that was in our current, charter bill that said you can't reduce by no more than 5%. Now it's a state law that any governmental entity, if the mayor sitting in Savannah says, I want to cut the budget by 7%, he can't do it.
That's right.
Or she can't do it.
Right.
Is that?
That's a fact. And
there's no exceptions there.
No exceptions. But I think it's really, man, so when that was happening, I got in the well. The well is a place where you speak to, whatever, to General Assembly and then to the public. And I said, listen, I think it's unconstitutional. I think it violates the Georgia Constitution. Because there's a section where you cannot, the General Assembly does not have jurisdiction over local matters as it relates to appropriating money. And so I said that because I think that is a basis for a lawsuit that should happen. Georgia constitutional law, you can pick that up and say it does violate the Constitution, needs to go away. But for now, you can't reduce the police by 5%. What if you lose population? I mean, you got places in South Georgia that are losing population. They don't need the same police force that they had, right? What do? So I got to, okay, if I got the water, energy, police, I can't reduce it because I'm losing population. And how do you take care of the services of the people who are left? Because you got to keep this artificially inflated police money out. And so there's just, there's always this foolishness that goes on.
Now, the way to change that, obviously, you said we are a battleground state. That means we're a purple state, not blue, not red. We're, somewhere in between. I guess they call it purple. But the only way that will change from these type of laws is through reapportionment.
Yes.
Until you change the district. But yet we got a statewide where a Democrat can win statewide, two senators can win statewide, and probably a governor next time. But yet the House, unless we do something about reapportionment coming up, will still be able to make these type of laws. So where do you see reapportionment going later? I know you're going to have a special session later this year.
Yeah, so Georgia has picked up, so for instance, right now in my district, I represent roughly 54,000 people. Because of all the growth in that sort of North Atlanta, Gwinnett area, everyone has to represent now about 60,000 people. So everybody's got to pick up another 6,000 seats. Okay, so where does that happen? And you know this, pre-clearance means that, so pre-clearance got severed. So that means that you had to pre-clear a map. If you draw a map, you had to go to the Department of Justice, get them to say okay on the map, and then, well, that's gone. But you still have clearance, right? You still have to make sure that a map demographically makes sense, the communities of interest are represented, and you have to do that. And so, well, I'm going to pick up 6,000 seats, but think about this. In South Georgia, they lose in population. Where did they get 6,000 more seats from? Because you still have to go through clearance. And so I think there's a tremendous opportunity. We may lose 1, 2 seats, but because they're going to monkey around with the districts. The Republicans are going to do that. But in the next 2 years, once it goes to the Department of Justice, I think that 2-4 years from now, Georgia will be completely blue. Completely. Because
so you think you'll be able to control the House and the Senate?
We'll control the House and the governor's mansion. There's no doubt.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe next year, depending on the match.
But 2024, you're thinking?
Easy, man, easy money, easy. If I'm a betting guy, and I'm not a betting guy, but if I'm a person in the general public, I would say, okay, what are democratic values and can I get behind those? Because it's coming. It's not going to change. Yeah. It's going to be here in 2024, 2026, no doubt. Because of the growth of people like me coming from the Northeast down to the South. I'm never leaving. I'm a Macon guy now, right? I'm makeable.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for doing it.
I was going to be here a long time ago.
But I ain't going nowhere.
Glad you stayed.
Yeah.
And you've paid your dues by being here. When I say paid your dues, you've added. Yeah. We've brought value to our community by being here. And we want to invite more people, even those who are driving trucks or doing whatever, picking up. Everyone adds value, but you've added value at a very different level. But what will your role be as a minority leader at the table? Are we just going to sit back and say, okay, the majority caucus, go and draw a map, we're going to... Where will the fight be?
Yeah, the fight, man. I'm already in it. I'm so far in it. By the time I'm on your show next year, all my hair will be gray. But I'm in the fight, right? So we could have. So, all right. We have 77 seats. There's 180 seats in the House. Democrats control 77 districts. So it means we have 77 representatives in the House. In order to get the next 14 seats that we need to get to 91. We have to pick up literally 20,000 more votes. Separates those 14 seats. 20,000 votes. That means Democrats are losing by 500 votes, 200 votes, 1,000 votes. So although the number's there, right? Yeah, we lost with 14 down, but it's 20,000 votes. And the population has already shown that 20,000 is all throughout the state of Georgia. So my job is to look at every precinct in every county to see where Democrats are underperforming and how to incentivize them to come out and vote. And so we'll be doing that for starting in June, middle of June. I'll be going around the state to say, hey, we need this community. Y'all need to show up. Now, and so that's how we do it.
Now, one thing at the Census Bureau, I used to work for the Census Bureau. We've always had about a 6% in the past, 6% undercount in the African American community was a given, and we always threw that 6% in. But this time, because of COVID was going on during the enumeration, I understand that they're going to be making a decision pretty soon at the Bureau of Census, and it will maybe even be a higher undercount. They will say, okay, this is an 8% undercount maybe this year. Now, will you be able to take those numbers, quote unquote, we can't put them in a particular precinct or a particular block, they call them at the census, to the census tract level, but will you be able to take those raw numbers and use them? So where's that 8%? If they say an 8% undercount in the state of Georgia, where's that 8%? Will you be able to place it anywhere or just out there? And
yeah, to your point, yeah, no, you can. And so, because the census is about really representation is about communities of interest. It's not, can James Beverly win this seat again? It doesn't matter whether I win or lose. It's does the 60,000 people in a space that I live in, do they feel fairly represented? And so when you start thinking about communities of interest, you got to think about where do you go to church, where do you go to school, what color, right? All these things you got to think about, right? Demographics, men, women, old, young. And so how do you make a community of interest for 60,000 people? And then you say, you take that, you layer in, okay, there's probably going to be an 8% undercount in African Americans, so let's go ahead and factor that in. So where is that 8% in different precincts and different areas that need a representative that can represent that undercount? And that's what I'm being the fight for. And that's where the fight, that's where the action is.
That's going to be a fight.
Yeah, that's just a fight.
Well, all politics local. We're speaking with James Beverly, who is a local representative of District 143, but he's also the Democratic lead of the House. He's in charge of all the Democrats. I hate to call them minority leader because, well, you know, they're the Democratic leader in the House, and that's who we speak with here. But all politics local, as I said. And we have an E-loss before us, not E-loss,
O-loss.
O-loss.
Yep.
E-loss, that's education. The O-loss before us, which, not saying you champion it, but you made it possible that the people will have a right to say whether they want to tax themselves.
Correct.
And I think that's your position on it, that you had that responsibility to put it before the people. And now it's up to the people to decide. Where will you be?
I'm going to vote against it.
So am I.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you know, so for 4 years, and people don't know, so OLOS is Other Local Option Sales Tax. And what it does is it says for every penny that you get, you can roll property tax back by that amount of money that you collect, okay? Now, that's great if you're a property owner, right? 40% of Bibb County owns property, but 60%, the people I represent, most of the people rent. How does that benefit you? You're paying an extra penny, but it doesn't benefit you at all.
And your food, you got to pay taxes on food even.
And you got to pay, right. Yeah. Come on, man. So I killed it for 4 years as a chair of the party, and now I'm the leader. Now, there's a different responsibility.
Exactly.
Right? As a leader, could I killed it? Yes. I could have absolutely said to the speaker, the governor, this is not something I want.
But you let the people decide.
People have to decide.
And I'm going to be out there trying to encourage the people not to vote for a tax for themselves. Because a sales tax, as you know, I'm not telling you anything, is the most regressive tax.
Absolutely.
Of all taxes.
Right, because if I'm making $100,000 a year, extra penny don't mean anything. But if I'm making $515, that's a lot of an extra penny going from 7 cents to 8 cents.
That's 8 cents out of every dollar.
Right, man, that's crazy. Right? Like, nah, man, and I ain't gonna get no benefit. Now, here's the thing. I think that, you know, where I fell on it this year, and this is the first year, man, I let it through. But I understood the moment. I understood you got a new mayor. He's gonna do what he's gonna do, whatever. But he said that if the money comes in, there's a period where you can collect money off of the taxes. What are you going to do with that money? It's going to be around $25 million before property tax rolls back. It's like there's a space where you can collect some money, and it's not allocated. It goes to the general fund. He said he's going to use that money for blight, to tear down houses. Now, I said, okay, you can tear down houses, but build back better. Just don't tear stuff down. How do we build stuff up, right? And I've had a couple of conversations with him about that. And he's like, Jane, hey, I'm going to do it, man. Okay, we're going to see. We're going to see.
Yeah.
So if it does pass, then we should expect that this mayor, will absolutely build back better. Just don't come in our communities and tear them down.
Yeah.
Where do you put grocery stores, food deserts? How do you put a bank, a credit union for people who are paying 9% because they got to do it every month? How about give people real loans? How give construction guys who look like me and you real money to help build up the community? You do that, okay. Right? So there's a part where he said he will, we'll see.
Yeah.
But we got to hold him accountable.
Maya Angelou made a very profound statement. She said, how to judge a person what they are going to do is what they have done. And we have about $100 million coming through this city. COVID. It was released, I think, yesterday. Just yesterday it was released, coming down to cities all over. We get 96 million, I think. So the question is, I know it's coming from the federal government, it's not coming to the state, so maybe you can have some influence, but you don't have sway, if you will.
Right.
But the question then would be, what's the plan for that money? How is that money going to be spent? Because that money will be spent before the OLOS taxes.
That's right.
So show me the plan for this money. Then
Then
maybe
we see.
I'll believe something.
Exactly.
But if you show me that you're just going to take money willy-nilly and spend it
Right.
any way you wish, then where you wish, then I think we have a problem. But speaking of COVID, what did the state? I know the state got a lot of money from the federal government. Are they parceling any down to local governments, or it's all going to be controlled at the state level?
Yes.
And the local governments get it theirs, what they get.
Yeah, so the governor, as most folk know, the governor, we were the last state to close, the first state to open. Last state, COVID's happening, it's going crazy. We're the last state. I didn't know there was a problem. He said this, I didn't know there was a problem. You ain't know it was a problem. California to shut down, New York to shut down, everybody shut down. He didn't know it was a problem, right? Last to close, first to open. As a result of that, 20,000 Georgians are dead. They're gone because this guy didn't do what he's supposed to do. And so now at this particular point, the money that was coming in, you cannot use that money to replace money that you lost. You can only do it to affect what happened during COVID. And so he did some things with nursing homes, he's doing some other stuff, and so that money didn't get really allocated the way it was. So the budget got cut by $1 billion. We can't, if he was smart, which he's not, right? He's chopping wood. You know, his commercial is, I'm chopping wood. Well, I'm a doctor. Let's heal the country.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You chopping, I'm healing, right? Use that money to heal folk.
He's cutting down, you want to build up.
Right, and that's the difference. And that's why Republicans got to go. That's why the governor is, and he's a decent fella. Now, I'm not very smart, but he's a decent guy, right? But the point is that if you put folk in charge during a crisis who understand crisis management, then you would have better outcomes. And he could have allocated that money somewhere else, but what he did is he continued to let corporate people get their tax credits. They could, right? There's a company in Atlanta that got $1 billion in tax credits, right? That he let go through. How? You could have cut that tax credit back by a little bit and gave people education. You got people living in a digital divide. Kids in our communities on their mother's cell phone. They ain't got no tablet.
Sitting outside of McDonald's trying to get on Wi-Fi.
Why are you not dealing with that, man? How do you heal folk? And he didn't do it. And so he's disqualified from being governor. And anything that he does, as much as I like him as a being, your politics are wrong for this moment. And so money didn't come to the county the way it was supposed to because he didn't allocate it the way he was supposed to, right? Now, what we got now is that Biden says, okay, we're going to give directly to municipalities. Right?
And the school system. We got $100 million.
$100 million. So what are they going to do?
That's what I want.
Are y'all going to build up communities? You're going to put housing in place? You're going to put food? Like, what are y'all going to do? Y'all going to create Wi-Fi with the money? I mean, because you could do that now. Now every kid can get a tablet, Wi-Fi. They can do whatever they need to do to be educated in a way that we have one opportunity in 100 years to make it better. So I'm going to watch this man, and I'm going to watch the school board and see what y'all do with that money.
We're all going to be watching.
Yes, we will.
And I'm not going to be watching. I'm going to be vocal about this because this is a one-time windfall. That we can do some big stuff, some good stuff. Needs to be done. It should be done. Well, we have about a minute left, but next year we know that we're not waiting until next year. Politics already started. Do you foresee a blue sweep? Do you see Stacey winning? Of course, you're the minority leader. You will play a big role there.
Sure.
Are we have a good shot of taking the governor's bench? You said 2024. What about 2022?
Yeah, so I think so. But Stacey hadn't declared yet. Now, Stacey,
but she doesn't really have to.
I mean, the day before, the lights will come on, everything will be gone. But if Stacey runs, and I say that, and Stacey and I are friends. And I don't know. I really don't know. I think she does run. I think she runs. And
if she runs, does she win?
That's the question. And I don't know. Because, like, in politics, there's a place where people get tired of hearing you, right? There's political fatigue. I know. I don't want to hear what the guy got to say. No, you may be right. I don't want to get
disappear for a while.
You got to disappear for a while. You got to get out the scene because people get comfortable. Like, we call you the greatest mayor ever in Bibb County.
You're kind.
No, that's true. It's a fact. That's a fact. That's a fact. That's a fact. That's a fact. Yeah. Like, bar none. But everybody calls you Jack.
Yeah.
Not the great, not the GOAT.
Yeah.
Call you Jack. And at a certain point, like, I don't want to hear what Jack got to say. Now, this is the greatest of all time. And they don't want to hear what you guys say. So I hope that Stacey can hold her powder for long enough for people to still find her relevant. If they do, if the people say, yes, she's still relevant, her voice is still relevant, she's going to win.
Well, great. And we want to thank you all so much for joining us. For Dr. Beverly, I'm Jack Ellis. Until next week, I'm your host. Good luck.